Sonic music is some of the best in the video game industry. 34 years of wall-to-wall bangers. But of course, in such a long-running franchise, some tracks get spoken about more than others. We all know our City Escapes, Seaside Hills and Rooftop Runs, but I want to shine a light on some more music that I think are underrated classics. I've covered the boss themes previously in my underrated Sonic boss music video, so today I'm going to be focusing on the stage music. So let's slap on some headphones and dive into it. Diamond Dust Act 1 screams Christmas all over it. Those sound fonts are delectably festive, combined with the sound of sleigh bells. It really puts you in the spirit of it all. Although I am recording this in February, and it's cold. I am also getting a cold. All the winter, none of the Christmas, but I digress. This is such a beautiful track with such a calm, peaceful but energetic composition by Hedgehog. I do love the Saturn 3D Blast soundtrack. It has very much a similar energy to the US Sonic CD soundtrack, albeit a lot more upbeat. And this track is very 90s Christmas movie coded. Really just puts a smile on your face. The Cybertrack soundtracks were my musical highlights of Sonic Advance 3. They are so full of life and fast pace that they gel perfectly with the very rapid gameplay. But in particular, Act 2 is my fave, mainly because of the contrasting layers it has to its theme. I love the bass line's constant responses to the melody which elevate the somewhat bounciness of the piece. Technical term, I know. You'll hear it a lot. It manages to sound both desperate, tense, yet exciting and fierce all the time. It's a chaotic cacophony that still manages to have restraint compared to Act 3, whereas Act 2 is more of an engaging variation, in my eyes anyway. High and Broken is gorgeous, one of the very best tracks in Secret Rings. The instrumentation is so dramatic, melancholic, and yet a little bit groovy, in just that order. It perfectly fits Sonic's mid-air sprint as he goes through the various sky ruins and sky mantas, chasing gargoyles. God, it's such a spectacle, really. This was the stage that I replayed the most when the game came out. I loved it, and this track has definitely got a lot to do with that. With its climatic soundscape, merging electric guitars, sitars, pianos with an orchestral melody and all sorts. It fits perfectly. And now for something completely different. Secret Base Act 2 for Sonic Advance is such a fun vibe. Like, how many franchises have the musical diversity that Sonic has? You can have a dramatic, fearsome electric guitar riff one moment, and then a bloody spy riff in the other. It's brilliant. This has got a good pace. The GBA sound font organ is carrying. I mean, it's so stupid, but in the best possible way. I mean, as a track for Sonic and his friends infiltrating and raising hell in Eggman's huge and impractically designed base, it's pretty good. When will you learn, Doctor? Yes, I know Sonic 4 is infamous for its soundtrack, but this one I think is actually really good, hence why it's on the list. Like, I was originally going to put Sky Fortress Act 1 on this list, but it's just too short a loop to justify compared to Part 2. It's more serious than a lot of Sonic 4 tracks, which I like, and I gotta say, I do prefer it to Sonic 2's Wing Fortress, the zone that the stage is clearly trying to riff on. I know the sound fonts used in Sonic 4 episodes 1 and 2 get a lot of stick, and in many cases justifiably, but in this case, I think it works really well. Oh god, this is amazing. This one takes you on a journey. I love the electric guitar focus in this one. I mean, it's Sonic storming through a dragon's lair. Of course you'd want the music to go hard as hell. It has no choice but to. 2000 Sonic music and its mission statement on being so rock focused is something I will always think is amazing. And Dragon's Lair has such a striking progressive rock opera tone to it. And to top it all off, this was done by a composer who worked on Sonic Spinball. I mean, if you've heard tracks from that game, it's very different, so he has magnificent range. Howard Drossin, take a bow. The Sonic Dream Team soundtrack is, for the most part, a quiet and synth-specific set of pieces which have quite a unique sound to them as far as Sonic tracks can go, and I don't mind it at all. Ego City Act 1 is the strongest in my opinion. It has a real driving force to it and sounds like something that wouldn't be out of place in the works of, say, Vince DiCola, best known for his 80s classics like Rocky IV and the original Transformers movie, and it all kind of gives off that kind of vibe with a touch of lo-fi. Yes, the cancelled Sonic Extreme, which would have been on the Sega Saturn and may have saved that console from going under. However, we are fortunate enough to have the conceptual soundtrack by Chris Sen, who worked on it, and was an amazing archivist of its development. So of course, I just had to feature at least one thing from this, because these tracks are really cool. Of course, tracks like Space Queens are really well known by this point, but Spiral Staircase is a track that stood out to me for just how 80s it sounded. You could imagine this in a movie like Beverly Hills Cop or Crocodile Dundee. It sounds so funky with that bass line, it's quite nasty with those light little melodic sprinkles. Sonic Rivals has an underrated soundtrack in general, and I love how this one came out for Quick Trip to Paradise, the theme for Forest Falls Act 1. The choir samples, the guitars, it all reeks of that aforementioned 2000s edge that Sonic excelled with. Thanks to the many talents of Jun Senoue, Sonic Rivals always had that sense of intensity for its format of racing, and this captures the early game feel of fun and urgency as you race against Knuckles. Easily my favourite song in Forces, Mortar Canyon is a beast. It's one of the cases where the synth works extremely well in melding with the other instruments, conveying this desperate atmosphere that the war is creating for the characters. Not so much the player, but anyway. The highlight is the second half of the piece, which you probably won't get to hear in the game itself, unless you either stall for time, because the stage is way too short, but it has this real climatic climb in its notation. The rising violins sound amazing and carries this real sense of finality. It straight up rocks hard. Dare I say that this version of Scrap Brain is better than the 16-bit version? Yes, I do say. It feels really befitting of a final zone. Where the 16-bit version has a sense of intrigue to it, this one basically tells you to keep moving or you're done. And I can appreciate both interpretations, but this one just feels cooler to me. Of course, it has to be noted that Scrap Brain in this version isn't the final zone. It's actually the penultimate. But it just went hard anyway. I respect that. The Riders games have incredible synthy futuristic soundtracks, and this is near enough one of the epitomes of that. Dive into Gravity is a wildly chaotic track. It's all over the place with drums, the orchestra's trumpets blaring fiercely, the piano and synths working overtime. There is so much going on, so many layers. God, I love racing on boards. They better bring it back for Crossworlds, please, please, please. I really must admit I do like a lot of the cyberspace tracks in Sonic Frontiers, but Floating in the Blue just hits different. It's so bouncy. That bass line, man! The melody line in conjunction with it is just so soothing and energizing at the same time. You try not moving your body to that rhythm. I mean, this is probably one of the most easily danceable 2 tracks in Sonic history. It feels like an ethereal house beat from the 90s, and I think that's beautiful. Honestly, I'm obsessed. I think I've listened to a loop for the last 20 minutes while working on this video. Waste my time, 2025. Admittedly, this is one of the lesser underrated ones on the list, but it's not really the first one that anyone thinks of in regard to Sonic 06's soundtrack. But honestly, End of the World is such a well-made piece of music. It's dark, sinister, and with each character it gets slightly changed up. The attention to detail is beautiful. This is the ultimate variations of a theme in Sonic. I love how each character gets a different extra hook to it. Tails gets this ominous slow feel. The drums kick in for Omega, beefing it up. Knuckles gets this eerie synthy drone on the top. Silver's temporarily does away with some of the bass and adds a choral voice, giving it more of a hollow, creepy feel. Rouge adds an organ that ups the intensity. Amy's nearly goes full choir with instrumental elements and an extra high, pinchy, sinister synthy quality. And then Shadows just goes full blast, up to 11 with most of the elements back in, all to cross the final hurdle. It's so well composed. It's definitely one of my favourite tracks by Otani to this day. Well, that's it. That's my selection of underrated stage themes. Hope you enjoyed this little musical selection, and tell me in the comments what stage themes you think deserve more love. And until next time, see ya!